leaders help people change. We've spent a lot of time discussing that. We've talked about the importance of casting a compelling vision and why holistic health matters in that. We've talked about why holistic health matters in identifying the present reality with maximum clarity through collaboration. Now we get to the really hard work of leadership. And the hard work of leadership is part 3 of this, and that is actually taking people, teams, and organizations from the current reality and getting them to that picture of a preferred future. James Kruse continues to kind of give us guidance on what this part of the leadership responsibility looks like. And he says this, he continues to say, change is the provenance of leaders. It's the work of leaders to inspire people to do things, which is that casting of the vision, inspire people to do things differently, to struggle against uncertain odds, and to persevere towards a misty image of a better future. There's a couple key words in there that if you spend any time in leadership, you can probably identify with. And the words are struggle and persevere. We are leaders, and leadership and the process of getting people from one place to another is inherently a struggle, and it requires perseverance. Many times people have a disjointed perception of what leadership is because they think once you become the leader, everything is just peachy keen and like you're sitting high in your fancy corner office and everybody does everything for you. But the reality is that inherent to leadership and the process of helping people change, there is struggle and there is a required perseverance, and there's a struggle not only for you as the leader but for the people you're leading. And we need to not only persevere in our own leadership, but help the people we're leading persevere towards that vision of the future. Because like we said, leadership is not linear from point A to point B with a straight line always increasing in health and productivity and effectiveness. It is usually a swirl and a mess because we're leading people. Another author and researcher in leadership, John Kotter, kind of adds and layers onto this when he says leaders don't make plans. He says they don't solve problems. They don't even organize people. What leaders really do is prepare organizations for change and help them cope as they struggle through it. Our job is to help them cope as they struggle through this change. As we struggle through the pathway from where we are, the present reality, to where we're going. And so as leaders, what do we do in this process of change? What does it actually look like to embrace this process? And even beyond James Kruse or John Kotter, these leadership theorists and gurus, there's another quote that you might maybe relate to a little better, and that's from Mike Tyson. And he says this, he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Have you been punched in the face, metaphorically, hopefully, in your leadership? As leaders, we know that we're going to get punched in the face. It's inevitable. The process of leading people from where we are to where we need to go is a process of simply kind of absorbing punches to the face and navigating the plan that we've created in the midst of this struggle and this coping. The question is, and here's why holistic leadership matters so much, is that if I'm holistically healthy, I might take a punch to the face, I might take a body blow, but it's not going to knock me out. If I'm unhealthy, I could take a couple of these hits and it's going to knock me out. It's going to derail everything I'm doing, both individually as a leader, but also as an organization. If I'm holistically healthy, I can absorb some blows and they won't be knockout punches. The thing about this is that we might think, okay, that's great in principle. I get it. I can do it. I can absorb some punches. I'm anticipating it. I can persevere. That's my job. But most of the time, we get this wrong. Leaders fail in helping people, teams, and organizations change at a shocking rate. And there's some data to kind of back this up. There is a consulting company called McKinsey Company, and they did some research on change initiatives in some large corporations and medium-sized corporations, and they say, what is the success rate of people who are actually leaders who are actually trying to institute some sort of change? So doing the 3 things we talked about: cast a vision, get a picture of the present reality, and actually walk people to change. And they identify that on the corporate level, the organizational level, 70% of these change initiatives fail. 70%. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds that's only successful in baseball. If you bat 300, then you're getting the Hall of Fame. In leadership, If I'm failing 70% of the time in the primary role and responsibility of helping people and organizations change, there's something wrong. Now, I also don't want you to think of change just as big organizational-wide change initiatives. Our job as leaders is also to help individuals change, to go from where they currently are to develop and get them to somewhere where they want to be. And that usually shows up in something like an individual development plan. Like, I want to help coach and mentor and build some intentionality into helping someone go from where they currently are to where they could be. There's more research on this as well. Research kind of indicates that in the business world, in the organizational world, they actually say that the process of instituting an individual development plan fails at an 85% rate. 15% of these individual development plans that help these people change succeed. 15%. That'll get you dropped to AA. You won't even be able to play AA baseball if you're batting 150. Again, the responsibility, the primary job of leaders is to help people and organizations change. And if we are failing at a rate so rapid as organization-wide and individual development of our people, we have got to find a better way. And there is one consistent thread that these researchers identify as why these change initiatives fail, both at the corporate level, the organization level, and individual. And they say this: it is because these changes, the pathway from where we are to where we go, are imposed upon the people and the organizations. They say, here's the path, here's how we're going to do it, and they impose it. They don't do any time to do, like we described in creating the reality. They don't do any time in collaborating and figuring out what's the best way to do it. And they don't presuppose all of the difficulties of leading human beings through this process. And so what's the thread that runs through these 70% fail and 85% fail rates of people trying to change? It's this, it's the imposition of a change fatigue. It's the imposition of an idea and a pathway on people that are dynamic, living, breathing human beings that are on a journey that we're asking them to take, and we don't take into account the struggle and the difficulty. And we treat them like robots. We say, here's the pathway you're going to take, here's the organizational pathway, here's the individual pathway, we're going to meet monthly, you're going to do this, we're going to check some boxes. But we don't anticipate the struggle that people are going to have as they navigate this change. We're imposing significant amounts of anxiety and stress on people as we're inviting them to change. Which is strange, because if you spent any time trying to change your own life, change your own habits, we realize that there is a significant amount of stress and anxiety that we impose on ourselves as we try to change stuff. And there's an author whose name is Edgar Schein who kind of gives us a picture of what it is we as leaders are actually doing to the people within our organization as we invite them to change, as we take the journey of changing. And he says there's two types of anxiety that we are imposing on people. The first is a learning anxiety. We are saying, in order to do something differently, in order to get different results, we have to do something differently. In order to do something differently, you have to learn something new. The anxiety around learning something new, we can't underestimate. The other thing is survival anxiety. Many times we say, if we don't change, here's what's going to happen. And usually the picture is a bad one. That's a picture of a negative future. If we continue on this path, we're not going to survive. So there's all sorts of anxiety where if I don't change, if I don't get my act together, I'm going to lose my job, the organization's going to fail, something bad's going to happen. We're not going to make an impact for God's kingdom the way we want to. We are imposing learning anxiety and survival anxiety simultaneously on people. And we're creating stress, and this is one of the primary things that contributes to the struggle and the need for perseverance as we travel this journey on change. And here's usually how we as leaders kind of impose this on people. And Edgar Schein, who kind of developed this, he said, ultimately what we want to do is we usually want survival anxiety to be more the primary motivator as opposed to learning anxiety. He essentially says, if you're going to motivate people, the best way to motivate them is to say, look, okay, we're not only are we casting a compelling vision of what the preferred future looks like, but we're painting a picture of what the future looks like if we don't change. That's a good way to motivate people. And that's going to motivate us to actually overcome and embrace new ideas, new methods, and to learn new things. So if you had to choose, survival anxiety should be higher than your learning anxiety. But here's what happens. As soon as we kind of like have like an initial shock of, okay, we're going to change this. You might have gone to the doctor. Good example. You go to the doctor. You get a report. You got some high blood pressure, and it's like, uh-oh, that immediate shock. Like, okay, I got to change this. I got kids. I got a family. I got all sorts of things that could go wrong. I don't want my health to get in the way. I need to get my blood pressure under control. I need to survive. But what usually happens is we leave the doctor's office, we take a couple of days, and that survival anxiety is reduced. And that's it lowers, it may actually be high, you might say high, but it gets superseded by the learning anxiety to say, okay, now I have to change my life so that I get my blood pressure under control. I might need to go to the gym. I need to change my diet. I might need to do some research. I need to learn new habits. And that anxiety usually kind of goes, whoop, that shoots right up past our survival anxiety, and we don't do anything because the anxiety around doing something new trumps the survival anxiety to say we need to actually change that motivation. And so as leaders, we kind of see this where we say, okay, well, we've cast a picture of here's what's going to happen if we don't change. And then they say, well, here's the new things that we need to, and so our followers are like, no, they're paralyzed because of all the learning anxiety we're imposing on them. But then usually what leaders do is we say, well, we need to motivate these people. Let's tell them how bad things are going to get if they don't change it. They say, hey, by the way, we're not changing fast enough. We're all going to lose our jobs. And then it's like, uh-oh, survival anxiety is through the roof. And then they're like, okay, suddenly I've sped up the learning anxiety. Now I got to hurry up and learn new things. So suddenly it's like, whoop, my learning anxiety shoots right past up to survival. But I'm like, no, I got to keep people motivated. Oh, by the way, the world's going to end. And so suddenly we have this race to the top of the anxiety we're imposing on people as we think of how to motivate them to change. Ultimately, what we're going to do is we're just raising the stress levels up and up and up and up, and we're just going to kill our people. We're just going to destroy their morale. We're not going to help them persevere or cope through this change. We are going to just layer on compounding stress and anxiety. It's going to paralyze them, or they're going to say, this isn't worth it. I'm going to go do something else. That's what we don't want to do. Now, there is a way to do it differently. And this is really where the holistic health kind of comes into play. Is that if we are holistically healthy, we are going to be aware of all of the stress and all of the anxiety that's going on in this change and in this pathway towards change. We're going to presuppose and we're going to think about all the ways in which, again, self-awareness, we're aware of the ways that these circumstances and situations affect us and affect the people that we lead. So we are going to do our due diligence before we embark on this journey. We are going to think, what kind of stress are we going to impose on people? Where's the levels of unhealth in our leaders or in our followers? And how do we mitigate the rapid increase of all of these learning and survival anxieties? And how do we reduce them? And ultimately, here's the difference. Again, like I said at the beginning, right, survival anxiety is high. You get that blood pressure notification from your doctor. Suddenly, a couple of days later, you're like, oh, I got to change my life. The same goes for leading people. You say, we need you to do this, Yon. You need to do this differently. Okay, all right, there's my survival anxiety. But then here's what you need to do differently. My learning anxiety goes up. Well, that's fine. That's natural. It's going to happen. But how do we keep the survival anxiety higher than the learning anxiety? Well, we do one thing. We have to, instead of raising survival anxiety, we got to reduce the learning anxiety. We have to spend our time and our due diligence and build out a plan and invite people into a process that helps them reduce the anxiety associated with doing something new. If I'm a good doctor, I give you, here's your blood pressure. It's terrible. You're in trouble. Have a great day. Terrible doctor, right? The difference is, here's your blood pressure. It's not good. If you can't keep on this pathway, on this track, here are some very simple steps to reduce your blood pressure. Here's some more advanced steps to reduce your blood pressure. And here's some ways in which you're going to kind of feel to make sure that we can fit it into your rhythm. Let's coach you through how you can fit it into your daily rhythm to make sure that we're successful. By the way, I'm going to check back in a couple weeks just to see how you're doing. That's good. That's reducing the learning anxiety immediately upon raising their survival anxiety. And it changes the way I, as a follower, someone who's being invited to walk through this difficult change process, navigates all of this stress and anxiety. I reduce my learning anxiety, and then my survival anxiety motivates me. And then, ironically, we succeed. You learn something new, you succeed, but then that kind of maybe might reduce your survival anxiety. You're like, oh, we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. The urgency to continue to change may go away. So then what's our job as a leader? To reduce even more learning anxiety. It's like, okay, well, we've done great so far, but we got to change this. Here's our next step of change, and we're going to help you do that in a certain way so that we maintain that motivation of survival anxiety. The goal, and what we could replace the word anxiety with motivation maybe. How do we motivate people? How do we keep people inspired and aspiring to that picture of a preferred future as they navigate all of the turmoil and churn and anxiety of learning something new and doing something differently? If we are not healthy, if we're not holistically healthy as leaders, we're going to get in the churn. We are going to be thrown wildly, and we're going to interact with people who are being thrown wildly in this new levels of anxiety, and we're going to react in ways that we're not going to want to react. We're going to say, why aren't you doing this? Get your stuff together. Let's go. We're all the whole organization is going to fail if you don't do this. All of our anxiety is going to leak all over everybody. All of our unhealth is going to leak all over everybody. We're going to have a compounding effect and make everybody else unhealthy. But if we're healthy, we have great self-awareness on the things that are going to trigger us, the things that are going to inform the way that we act and the way that we behave. And ultimately, this pathway is the hardest part of leadership. It's the hard stuff. And it's the reason 70% of these things fail, 85% of individual development plans fails, because this is the hard stuff. It's leading people. It's being with people as they cope, as they struggle, and to help them persevere towards that picture of a preferred future. Helping people navigate the pathway of change while healthy is hard. Helping people navigate the pathway of change while unhealthy is impossible.